to the Pod in the North, a Game of Thrones and a Song by Some Fire podcast, where we discuss all our favorite and least favorite topics from both the books and the show. We got this thing handled. Got the perfect face for radio. Illegal downloading, I don't know what that is at all. It just felt like the devil was coming out of my ears. I still don't know what the hell happened. And now everybody goes silent.
Welcome back to the podcast, listeners. Joining us, we have Elizabeth, Fedon, and myself, Tonya. And we will be speaking about House Stark and other Northern houses. But first, since Fedon is just now joining us, you want to tell us about how you first were introduced to the books and show and maybe your first impressions?
Yes, I've been a long-time book reader. I sort of stumbled upon the first book when I was looking for reading stuff for the weekend, and I saw this Game of Thrones, and there was this recommendation by Robert Jordan, whom I read at that time, and I thought, well, okay, I'll try this. And I was drawn into it from the very first moment, from the scene with the dire wolves in the snow and everything. And then I was a fan for a long time until I gave up for a time because George R. R. Martin just didn't get on with writing. But I slipped into the fandom again when the show started because I wanted to see how it was depicted on screen, and I loved the show from the very beginning, and now I'm hooked and I want to see how it all ends. Waiting for 20 years for the end of Game of Thrones or the Song of Ice and Fire.
Dear God, just please let us know how it ends.
So that's me.
And you also have a ton of meta on the facts because you are one of the smartest book readers I know.
Oh, thanks. It's really fun, and I've thought so long about the books, and I've read them 4 or 5 times. So I some of the chapters I wrote I know really well. Mm-hmm. Others I skipped on the second read, but just last summer I did my third reread of all the stuff. I only skipped the Red Wedding. I've read the Red Wedding only once because it's too sad. I can't handle it.
Oh no, I'm dreading when I come back to that in my reread.
Yeah, and still, it's so well written that some of the sentences still are in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Catelyn, how she said that her hair is cut and everything, and that's still in my head, even though I've read it about 17 years ago or something, but I haven't managed to read it again. So yeah, and I love speculating. I've always loved speculating in my fandoms with Harry Potter as well, and so and George R. R. Martin is he's so meticulous about which words he puts in and how he describes the scenery, and it's you can see that almost every time he uses a word, it has an impact and it has an importance, and it's not just a word. It's a difference if they eat lemon cakes or pig feet or so. So it's fun to sort of hunt after all these allusions and hints and try to get at what he is after for the ending.
What makes it so fun to read into everything and read deep is he's come right out and said that he's writing for people who do that. He wants people to read, reread, and try to figure out everything and see all the signs. And
He likes to quote us, is what he's essentially saying. He wants us to have our brains explode.
And the thing is, even if you just read casually, you have to put your brain into it because all is described from different point of views. And if you skip something, you just don't get it. You don't get the intrigue or the machinations or anything. So you really have to read carefully, even if you don't delve into it. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, like in the second book, when Tyrion starts his little scheme to root out the spy at the court, and he tells three people three different things, and you really have to check what happens to see, well, who is the spy. And of course, Tyrion in his thoughts tells us who he thinks is the spy, because it's Maester Pycelle, but still, you have to read carefully, and but you have to read even beyond that for all the little hints, and I think it's really interesting. Yeah. So that's why I like to write meta on it.
And I love reading your meta on it.
And of course, A Search of Ice and Fire is a great help,
that.
because sometimes I sort of have a vague memory of what was in the books, and then I just go and look and type it in, and then I find it. So it's really great. I hope they put Blood and Fire and Blood on the Search wiki, on the Search as well.
So they haven't put that up yet, or?
No, they haven't put it on, not yet.
I mean, it just came out. I should try to be patient.
Yeah, it takes some time, yeah. I have put in the little stories, which are included in Fire and Blood, the Rogue Prince and the Princess and the Queen, and so on. So, yeah, but not the others. Not yet.
My favorite Starks, I have, would number one favorite be my girl Sansa Stark. She is the love of my life. And I just relate to her in so many different ways. Like I've too have been blinded by being young and like thinking I'm in love and thinking that somebody's a good person when they're not.
Oh yeah, I've been there too.
And then she gets so much flack for people for like not being a Stark, when in reality she's probably the Starkiest Stark over Stark. Like she is so much her father's daughter. It's not even funny. She has his personality to a T almost. She looks just like Caitlyn, but she acts just like Ned.
She's a funny mixture, really, yeah.
You see even in the show, like as soon as she's away from Ramsay, she's not thinking like, oh, I need to, relax and chill, and maybe me and John will go to Dorne or somewhere far away and relax and live our lives. She's like, no, I'm going to get our house back. That is our home. We're Starks, and that's where we belong.
Yeah.
And my other favorite Stark is the OG, Brandon. He's full of all sorts of crazy magic architecture. Builds Winterfell, builds the Wall, builds Storm's End. Just builds it all. That's my limerick for the day.
You were talking about that being your favorite. The Riverlands, apparently in some of their legends, they claim he was descended from Garth Greenhand, the person they say brought the Andals over. So it's kind of like they're trying to lay a bit of claim to Starks.
Yeah. Well, everybody tries to lay claim to Brandon the Builder, yeah. Stormlands and everyone, so everywhere there's a great building, Brandon the Builder has built it. He's the builder, the mythical builder of every great building in Westeros. Do you think he built it all?
I like to believe the hype. I want to believe.
And because Winterfell is so great, everybody wanted to have a Brandon the Builder as well. So, do you believe he built the Wall as well? Or did the Children of the Forest build the Wall?
With the Wall, I don't know. I feel like the Wall, maybe the Children of the Forest built the Wall with him. Maybe that's how he learned how to build it all, build everything, was because he took architecture classes from the Children of the Forest.
Yeah. Magic.
Well, it's like some of the legends and such say that he had both the Children of the Wall and, Children of the Wall, the Children of the Forest and giants helping him build both the Wall and Winterfell. He couldn't have done it all alone, just one man.
You wouldn't need giants to build the Wall, really. It's that high. Yeah. So I tend to think that he built Winterfell and the Wall with the help of the Children of the Forest, because I wonder if he was a magical figure at all, if he was a green seer or something. He must have had some magic to communicate with the Children of the Forest, but we don't really know what kind of magic that was.
I wonder if they'll address that in the Age of Heroes show they're putting together.
So who's favorite Stark of Tonya?
Oh, well, okay. During the series, it's kind of hard for me to choose. I'd have to go with Sansa as my top tier favorite. I love the others too, but I just absolutely love Sansa for how she's held up through all she's been through. And I can't help but kind of fall for the character that the fandom likes to bag on. It kind of makes me love her a little more. But as far as pre-series, my favorite is Cregan Stark. He had his priorities straight. When he was asked to come in during Dance the Dragons or whatever, he basically said, I got to take care of my people first. Got to get all the crops in and everything. And then when he got down there, he got the shit he needed to get done. He got it done. And then he went home. Yeah. So I like that.
I hope that's foreshadowing for John.
Yeah, that's one Stark he could really learn from. So what about you? What are your favorites?
Well, when I started the books, Arya was my favorite. My younger sister as well, and my sister and I, we had a sort of relationship like Sansa and Arya. We're father apart, but still, she was always the girl who did everything my parents said, and I got into trouble, so I naturally related to Arya, and I really felt for her point of view, and I didn't like Sansa in the first book, but in the second book, but when I read the second book, I felt sorry for her with all the situation in King's Landing, and I sort of grew to like her, and I really fell in love with her when at the Battle of the Blackwater, when she managed to soothe the Hound when he when he threatened her, and he sort of wanted his song, and she did sing a song, but not the one he wanted, and she managed to soothe him. And this sort of magical property of music was what really got me, and I thought, well, okay, she doesn't seem to have magic, but her kindness and her empathy, this is what gets people, and people want to protect her, even someone like Dantos. And this is a sort of a magical quality which is weak magic in a way, but it's also very effective. So that's why I came to like Sansa. But I think my favorite Stark would be Ned Stark. And still in mourning. Such a great guy, yeah. And I really would like to have sort of pre-series tidbits of Robert's rebellion and how he came to know Catelyn and married her and so on. Yeah, but so it's sort of shifting. I like all the Starks, but would you really press me to name a favorite, I would say Ned. And pre-series, I think Brandon the Builder would be my favorite as well. Yeah.
Well, it's hard not to love Brandon the Builder.
Hold on. Sorry, I'm gonna go, guys. I'm having troubles at the house. Hold on. Sorry.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about, or?
We could talk about other houses in the north. Which is your favorite house in the north, apart from the Starks, of course?
I don't know so much about favorite, but a house that really stuck out to me so much that I wrote it here in the notes was House Manderley. They were from the Reach originally.
Yeah, they were the what kicked out, yeah.
And it stuck in me because even, I forget how long, it's I want to say 1,000 years, even like 1,000 years later, it's still stuck in Descendants' mind that the Starks took them in when they had nowhere else to go, and they gave them the Wolf's Den.
I think this is also very touching in A Dance with Dragons, when Lord Manderley, when Davos is with Lord Manderley, and there's this little girl who keeps talking, well, we should be loyal to the Starks, and we should kick out these Frey people and so on. And it's very touching. This little girl who spits fire at the Frey guests. I love it, yeah. And they also seem to have a tendency to get a bit thick in the waist, so to say.
Just a little bit.
Well, there's also in Fire and Blood, there's one of the Manderleys who is described as being too fat to sit his horse. So it seems a family, but it sort of, it makes me like them even more because it means that they love life and good food and so on. Yeah. So I like the Mormons on Bear Island.
I like the book version. I'm not too fond of Lyanna in the show, just because of what the writing's done with her.
Well, I have some problems with her because, well, she's... I don't think Lyanna Stark, Lyanna Mormont in the book is like that. No. Lyanna Mormont in the book is also sassy and she knows her mind, and she writes to Stannis and tells him to fuck off. But in the show, she really voices some of the more problematic anti-girly sentiments, and I didn't really like that. Yeah,
and that contradicts what their house is about. On the door to the house, they have a carving of a woman holding, I want to say an axe, but some sort of weapon, and in the other arm she's holding a child.
Yeah. So they know to do both. The parent. And fighting and probably knitting and wielding a sword. So it's a reduction of a very, very nice house, really. Yeah, to just reduce them to the fighting. And
I don't know, I didn't see like a whole lot of tragic figures, and when I was looking at the Stark history, I mean, I could have missed some, except for like Brandon the Burner. After he lost his father, he just gave in to grief and was burning the whole fleet. It's just kind of like, that really stuck out to me because you don't have a lot of truly tragic figures like you do in, like, say, the Targaryens.
Yeah, but Brandon he was the son of, he is Brandon the Shipwreck, isn't he? Or is it Brandon the Burner? Brandon the Burner, yeah. It also reminds me a little bit of a scene in Tolkien's Silmarillion, where one of the tougher guys burns all the ships so they can't return. So it's an act of destruction that sets a path for the future without any other opportunities, other chances. So it's really a very defining act, a very, very stark act. Yeah. I like how in the history books, in the pseudo history books like Fire and Blood and so on, I like that the Starks always give me a feeling of being down to earth and pragmatic and not being over ambitious, but looking out for other people, and like Regan Stark who was involved in the Dance of the Dragons, and it really is. They really seem to be nice people, all in all. Like responsible people who look out for their own and who think about the realities of life. When Cregan Stark, when he went south to fight in the Dance of Dragons, he took all the second and third sons who would be just mouths to feed in the winter to come, and it's sort of. He wanted to fulfill his obligation, and on the other hand, he is also pragmatic and says, well, okay, I'll just take the people who are superfluous in the winter, it's... Yeah. Yeah,
I like how it seems George is presenting not just individual Starks, but the Starks as a whole, as this family who are... I mean, they may not, crave power or ruling, but they're just good at ruling, and people who are ruled by them, they have this loyalty to them, except for, you'll have the Boltons and Freys, but you'll have people like that everywhere.
Well, yes. In general, they seem to be good rulers, and I think what is fascinating in the fifth book, Dance with Dragons, the book, when Theon is at Winterfell and he talks with all these people, and there are people like Barbara Dustin, who is very critical of the Starks, but even feeling that she's critical because she really would have liked to be part of the Stark family. She was in love with Brandon, with the elder brother of Ned, and she wanted to marry him, and she was just so angry that she didn't get the opportunity to become a Stark that she decided, so I'm going to work against them. It's sort of spurn love or something like that. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and of course Theon, in his heart of hearts, also wants to be a Stark. So there must be something about the family. Yeah, apart from the fact that they are, of course, an influential, powerful, and family with a long history. But at the moment, in the books, they are not very powerful because in the books, we're still at the point where Winterfell is lost to them. So so everyone wants to be a Stark.
So some people point to the personalities were presented with Ned's brother Brandon and his father, and how very different Ned is. Some people question whether Ned is a accurate representation of what it is to be a Stark, given that he was raised since 8 in the Vale. Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, I think that probably John Arryn played a role in forming Ned as we meet him in the books. But I think that we have enough Starks in the history of the Stark family that are pointing towards that the Starks are a good family, really, because we have Briggan Stark, we have Brandon the Builder, we have the Starks who put an end to the horror the Boltons did with their subjects, so I would say there's enough evidence that it's not just, Ned. I think, we don't know much about Ned's father, Rickard, but apart from the fact that he was probably quite ambitious because he wanted to marry his children to the south. He wanted Brandon to marry Catelyn. He sent Ned to the Vale to be fostered in the Vale. So he wanted to make connections to the south. But on the other hand, this might have been part of the policy to contain the madness of King Aerys, because we don't really know enough about that. All the machinations and intrigues the great lords did to sort of contain the growing madness of King Aerys. So I think that all these ambitions for new alliances in the south might be seen in this context, so that Rickard really was after the good for the whole of Westeros, and it was not just personal ambition that made him try to get these alliances. So I'm not sure about Rickard. I'm quite sure that Brandon was difficult. So have been very charming, Catelyn remembers him quite well, and she liked him instantly. That's the feeling you get, that she liked how his eyes, and she still remembers how she gave him her favor when he had that duel with Littlefinger, and I think she certainly had a crush on him, yeah. But Brandon seems to. Well, he gives me the impression of not taking things too seriously, sleeping around a bit, I personally think that he was the person who slept with Ashara Dane and not Ned, and there was Barbara Dustin, of course, and he sort of had an arrogance which might be connected to him being quite young. He just rode to King's Landing to to tell Iris to give Lyanna back, and it's just, stupid, it was arrogant, and but how young people are sometimes like that, and not believing that anything could happen to them, that they could die. And I think this is what Brandon was. He was sort of rash and a bit arrogant and charming, and he did a terrible mistake by riding to King's Landing. He should have thought about that, but he didn't. And that's I don't think that this is a very Stark trait, actually. This sort of rushing off and
the impulsive temper.
Not really, Rob is not like that. Rob thinks his plans through, and you can't sort of trick him into attacking. Jaime Lannister tries to trick him into attacking him, and he just doesn't do it, and Ned is also like that. He really thinks about his plans before he does anything. So I have the feeling that Brandon is the one who is the odd one out.
Because there's not a lot of Starks in the history books that give the impression of being anything other than these strong, staid, thoughtful characters. Even when they're doing extreme things, it's always for a purpose, and you always see that it's not like just because they got a wild hair,
Yeah. And they don't they usually don't have to. They don't have a temper usually, and I think if they do something extreme like this Brandon who burned the ships, it's more of a calculated use of their anger and sadness, and not really that they are overwhelmed. That's the feeling I get from this, just like and I would say Brandon is really it's really the exception, and I what we know of Rickard, of Ned's father, I think he's also more the thoughtful type, and maybe someone who just sits in a corner and thinks before he talks. Yeah.
Well, that, and Robert was raised with Jon Arryn as well, and he's nothing like Ned. So you're kind of like, I'm not so sure that Ned gets all of his best traits just from Jon Arryn.
I think it's sort of that Jon Arryn enhanced the good traits in Ned. They're already there. Yeah, I think so. So I don't think it's just Ned. I think Brandon is the odd one out. What are your thoughts on Brandon?
He's a Stark, so I'm inclined to think the best of him automatically. But in some ways, he reminds me a lot of what we hear about Robert from when he was younger. With the being charming and sleeping around and all that, and all the things that made Lyanna not want to be betrothed to him. So it's But I don't really like Robert, so I'm kind of like, do I really want to make that comparison?
Well, yeah, Robert is difficult, because Ned obviously likes him,
Yeah.
But in the end, he also thinks, maybe I never knew him, or maybe I don't know the man he has become now. And I think if we look at the time of Robert's rebellion, we might get a different impression. Of course, he did sleep around, and he would not be my first choice for a husband. No, certainly not. But you also get the feeling that somehow him getting power made him worse than he was.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can definitely believe that.
He might have been a good Lord of Storm's End, if he wasn't the most powerful man in the kingdom. I think Robert is one man who's better when he is checked in some way. So I think that becoming king sort of, made all his vices come into the open.
Well, you were talking about how Ned kind of blinds himself to the worst parts of Robert, even after he's seen that Robert condoned Tywin ordering the deaths of Rhaegar's children and wife.
They had a fallout about that, I think, if I remember correctly. So, and they only reconciled after Lyanna's death. So he was at least he knew enough about Robert being okay with Rhaegar's children killed, that he really risked a fallout with the new king, you know, and he reconciled after Lyanna's death. So I think, and I can relate to that, you know, because, well, it sort of rearranges the situation if someone both loved is dead. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying the way that he kind of whenever they meet again, whenever Robert comes up to Winterfell at the beginning of the series, and he's kind of basically seeing his old friend where the king is. It kind of puts me in mind of the way Sansa the people she loves, she'll gloss over the worst parts of them and kind of blind herself to them. It just reminds me of how much alike they really are.
Yeah, certainly. You know, Ned romanticizes things as Sansa does, and I think that this is strengthened by the arc that George R. R. Martin gives to Sansa, because Sansa goes to places where Ned was. Sansa goes to the Vale, yeah, and I think Lost Little Satellites had this idea that she might come to the sisters as well. This one of the places where Ned was before during the rebellion. So I think and you know how much Sansa is like Ned is really emphasized by small things like one thing I never realized myself, because I'm not that much into fashion, you know, but Ned always realizes how people are clothed and the colors and so on, so he really eye for that. And Sansa as well, you know, she thinks about, well, okay, I should don the brown robe because I don't want to be seen too much or something. And you know, this sort of and Catelyn never thinks about colors or fashion or anything, and it's I'm sure it's not coincidence. I'm sure it's intentional that Sansa has this trait of Ned, you know, and yeah. So I think we tend to overlook this because, well, Ned, of course, is the warrior and the lord and so on, and he, on the surface, he doesn't seem to have anything in common with his girly daughter, you know. But yeah, but if you look deeper, you can see that she's really her father's daughter.
And I could see her having to make that trek from the Vale up through the north like he did during the rebellion.
Yeah. It would be a nice reiteration.
Yeah.
yeah. of Ned's journey. And also, you know, this sort of Ned has this outlook on the world and on people that he thinks the best of people. He sort of, Catelyn tells him that he can trust Littlefinger. Of course, it's wrong to trust Littlefinger, but he does it, and because Catelyn told him. And he also thinks that all might look grim, but still we might have a good end. You know, when during the rebellion, when he went to the sisters and he talks to the Lord at the sisters, he tells him, well, okay, but of course I'm a man on the run now, but maybe we will prevail, and what will you do then?
Yeah.
And and I think that's really his sort of how he sees the world. Maybe we will prevail, you know, that sort of motto, you know, even though winter is coming is the Stark's motto. for Ned, we could maybe say that he adds to that, well, winter is coming and maybe we'll see it spring or something.
Yeah.
That's why I like him.
Yeah. Well, that and in the A Song of Ice and Fire world, he is pretty much the best example of a father we have. I mean, the others are all pretty much dumpster trash fires, but Ned's a pretty decent father.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Pawn in the North. We hope you'll join us next time as we share a few lists and attempt to keep things orderly.